Good afternoon and welcome to the highly anticipated North Cascades Bluegrass Festival's interviews with the pros. The North Cascades Bluegrass Festival, one of 5 final nominees for IBMA's Momentum Award Festival Event Venue of the Year in 2018, is held annually over the Labor Day weekend. We are delighted to announce that this year's festival is just around the corner on September 2nd and 3rd. To enhance the overall experience, the festival provides camping facilities for both dry and RV camping, starting from the Tuesday before Labor Day and will continue until the Tuesday after. Today, we're privileged to have Kristen Grainger and Dan Wetzel with Kristen Grainger and True North. In addition to their performances on the main stage, they will be providing workshops and participating in the Pro Jam on Saturday evening of the festival. Their exceptional talent and profound expertise are sure to captivate us all. I know they have for me in the past. So without further ado, let's welcome Kristen Grainger and Dan Wetzel.
Hey there.
Hi there. How you doing?
Doing well. Thanks,
Doing
David.
great. Yeah.
I'm going to try and turn this around. There we go. So audience can see you instead of always looking at me all the time. So first off, I just wanted to do a quick shout out of thanks to the band for agreeing to be in the Artist of the Year's North Cascades Bluegrass Festival. During Wintergrass 2022, Robin Starr, my wife, who was a band ambassador for your band, encouraged me to take some time out of my volunteer schedule to come and listen to you all. So during a break, I was able to do that, and I'm so glad I did. And here you are playing for our festival. So we're so honored to have you. So thank you.
We're so honored to be asked. This is going to be a really wonderful weekend.
Yeah, thank you. I hope so too. Kristen, let's start off our actual interview by having you share a little story about how yours and Dan's pinkies accidentally touched. And Dan, feel free to chime in as well, because there's always a other side of the story.
Well, I have no idea what you're even talking about. No, that is actually isn't how we met, but it's how we sort of connected and romantically. It's how we sort of fell in love. That we were both working in the studio, trying to finish a project with a band I was in, and Dan had just played a few tracks on it with us, played mandolin on it. And we were the last people who were still interested in producing and finishing this CD. The band was kind of falling apart, as bands will. And so it was back when we were doing analog recording. And that's where you've got a board with, levers that move up and down on tracks. For people who don't know what analog recording means, it's no longer nothing computerized. And so Dan and I were riding the faders, as it's known, where he's got his hands on a couple faders and I've got my hands on a couple, and his left pinky touched my right pinky, and there was a spark, like a lightning bolt, and we both remembered it. It wasn't static. It was a real kind of electric shock.
We didn't acknowledge it at the time to each other, but we talked about it later, and we both remember feeling that moment, just feeling like, wow, there's something here with this person. And it might have all been in our heads, but it was simultaneously in both of our heads. So it was great to talk about that later.
That's great. I hope that brings back real pleasant memories every time you talk about it. That's pretty awesome.
It does.
So share with us the backstory of how you landed Josh and Martin, 2 great musicians, by the way, formerly with the Bluegrass Regulators.
Yeah, we started True North in like 2003. And had a group of people then we were playing with everybody was kind of in different bands, and there were people that I knew. And as the band started to do better, a few people had to bow out back then, a couple of years in, because it's like none of us really knew if we would take off or not. And they had commitments to these other groups. So we reformed at that point and played with another couple, Dale and Suzanne Adkins, and played with them for 10 years or so. And Dale is also the one who has recorded all of our albums. He's just an outstanding recording engineer. And so we had a great run with Dale and Suze. And then when they retired, they moved east, and we were looking for somebody we were just finishing recording an album and looking for somebody to help us release it. And we had played a bluegrass festival that summer in Central Oregon, Wheeler County Bluegrass Festival, and ran into Martin Stevens, who we had known since he was just a young kid, and we'd watched him grow up and become an excellent musician. And some of the Regulators were playing that summer. They weren't all there, but a few of them were there, kind of having a reunion. And I just happened to be chatting with Marty as the festival was closing, and said, "Are you playing with him regularly now?" And he said, "No, I'm really not. I'm just teaching and missing it, because their band had kind of dispersed across the nation and weren't playing anymore." So we got to thinking about it a month or so later that we needed to recruit some players to at least release our album, if not continue to play together. And we got a hold of Marty and said, "Do you want to come down and play with us and just see how it goes?" And he said, "I'd love to." And he came down for a few nights and rehearsed and said, "Let me know what you're after." And we said, let us know what you want to do. And it just really clicked. And then we said, "Who would you pick as a bass player?" And he said, "Josh," in a heartbeat. And Josh happens to be Dale's son.
Right.
But we'd also watched Josh grow up and become an amazing musician, and hadn't seen him play bass a lot, but knew that he did with the Regulators. We knew him mostly as a guitar player, but we got a hold of Josh too, who lived in Portland at the time. And he said, "Love to, let's just see how it works out." And we got together, and it just clicked really well. And the next thing we knew, they wanted to continue playing with us, and we started booking jobs, and we had a tour to Ireland, and then we decided to record an album a couple years later. And it's just been really fun playing with them. They infuse a lot of energy into the band. They're great singers and players, and we just really work well together.
They're really fun. They're really fun. They're great energy, and they're silly and really close friends, and so they're really fun to be around and play with.
That's awesome. It's nice to have that nice blended mix in a band.
Yeah,
Really
definitely.
is.
So you were talking about albums. Are you currently working on a new album by chance? And if so, when do you expect it to be released?
I'm glad you asked that question, Dave, because yes, we are. We have a new album called Fear of Falling Stars, and it's going to be out. I think it's officially drops in November, but we'll have the disc with us. We'll have those available for sale at the festival in Bellingham. And these days people release a single at a time. So we'll be releasing singles between now and November. And then at this festival, we plan to play a whole bunch of tracks off the album too.
Cool. That sounds like an album that would work if Robin and I actually got really, really dizzy somewhere. For Falling Stars. Sorry, it's funny. I'm sure our audience and your fans are curious about you and your band members. What you actually do when you're not working, performing, or rehearsing music? Can you take a moment to provide some insight into your lives when you're not performing?
So Josh is a software engineer and works for a company out of Portland, though he relocated to Salem, where he grew up, and works mostly from home. So he's got a full-time job, but that he can be quite flexible with, which makes him available to play. Marty is a third grade teacher, and he was off for a couple of years working on his PhD, and now he's back ABD on that PhD, but he's back in the classroom since COVID stopped. And so he's a little more limited during the school year, but then is wide open once the middle of June comes. And then Kristen and I both retired a few years ago. I was a home builder for a lot of years, had my own company, and Kristen has had a great career in kind of two very big careers that both happened to the same person, one in politics and one in higher ed. I'll let you talk more about that specifically.
Yeah, but basically they've been alternating chapters where I worked in higher education, or worked in politics, and then for 10 years, then in higher education for many years, and then went back to politics when a friend of mine who became the governor called me and said, "Can you drop everything and be my communications director?" And so that's kind of where I've spent a lot of years, was working in those two worlds. And, there's politics in higher ed, and I suppose there's still some ongoing learning in politics, but really what I was doing was strategic communications, no matter where I was. It's kind of the same kind of work.
And we both left those jobs a couple of years ago now, in order to pursue music full time. We've been doing it as an avocation, as a second career for years, and now we're just really glad to be able to do it full time.
Awesome. That kind of leads into my next question. you said higher education. If I'm not mistaken, weren't you vice president or something like that at a university? Or
Yes, I was vice president at Willamette University,
Willamette,
which is
yes.
a small private liberal arts college in Salem. It's right, as a matter of fact, it's right across the street from the state capitol. So the president of the university's office window looks into the governor's office window.
And I understand that you also are a speechwriter, and you talked about getting into the politics and have done so for some folks with some very prominent positions. And I think you kind of just told us how that came into play, but any unique stories around that, or would you like to start writing my interview questions for me?
Right. Well, so being a speechwriter is interesting because you're not writing speeches that you ever give. I never gave any of the speeches that I wrote, and I'm trying to write in the voice of different people, and they're different from me. They're also very different from each other. So the first person I wrote speeches for was the Oregon Attorney General, Hardy Myers, who was the first person I wrote those kinds of speeches for. Then I wrote them for Ted Kulingoski, who was running for governor at the time and won. And then for a university president who was a Victorian literary scholar, and then a university president who was an astronomer, and then a governor who was kind of shoved into the governorship in Oregon because the prior governor resigned kind of under a cloud. So she was we don't have a lieutenant governor in Oregon, so the Secretary of State becomes governor. So Kate Brown became governor. That's who called me when I was working in the president's office at Willamette and said, "Can you drop everything and come over and be my communications director?"
Okay.
So I wrote her inauguration speeches. I wrote her State of the State speeches. But you have to write in the voice of the person that you're working for. So they're all very different people with different orientations, and some very flowery speakers and some very serious speakers. The Attorney General said, "I am not funny. Do not write jokes into my speech. I can't be funny. My wife has begged you not to try to make me funny." But it's also really fun, rewarding work because you can see the audience's reactions and what quotes reporters pull out, and it's very interesting and varied work. So it's never the same.
I think if I can interject, I think it is
Please.
really informed Kristen's songwriting too. Kristen's a world-class singer and a wonderful musician, but I think her biggest strength is her songwriting, and she writes these story songs that always are from a perspective of some person or item, and it's so convincing. And I've listened to hundreds of the speeches she's written for other people, and I know all the people that are giving those speeches just by being around Kristen, and it never occurs to me that the person giving that speech didn't write it. It always sounds authentically like them, and Kristen's ability to do that in a song is the same way. She can write from the perspective of a mountain boy living, up in Appalachia somewhere, and then she can turn around and write from the perspective of a 9-year-old at the border. It's just incredible how she's able to do that. So
that's a great compliment.
Good training.
and just listening to your songs, I can attest that is definitely true. Speaking of writing, this goes to both of you. How do you approach a song? What are the things that go through your mind when you're trying to develop a song? And do you work on words first, or do you work on melody first, or how does that all come to play?
I'll go first. For me, it can come all different ways. There are songs where I definitely have a topic that is in my head that I need to get out somehow and get it into a song form. And so I'll start to develop the thoughts about it. And as I'm doing that, I'm getting a sense of what the music will be like. So I'm kind of creating them at the same time. On this new album, I wrote a song for Kristen, and I knew that I wanted to speak to how I feel about her and let people that are our fans hear that from me. And so I immediately thought I need to put this in 3/4 time. That's a time signature that just seems to be something that Kristen and I, it's something intimate between us. I don't know why. Whenever I grab her to dance in the kitchen, it's a waltz. It's in 3/4 time. And
it's occasionally a polka.
It's sometimes a polka. And so I'm already thinking of this is going to be the meter of it, and the melody starts to develop as I'm thinking of the story that I want to portray. Whereas another song I wrote on the album, I was inspired. A couple of years ago, we played like 3 different festivals in a row where Mary Flower was also at those festivals. And she's a great Piedmont Delta blues guitar player and singer. And I just love the way she plays. And so I thought, I want to write a song with that feel to it. So in that case, I was kind of thinking more about the music first, and then what sort of a story would fit this. And so for me, it can come a couple different ways. There are songs I've written where I've written the whole thing lyrically first and then try and find a melody, and it works okay, but not as well as if I'm creating it all at the same time with the same feel.
How about you, Kristen?
Well, I am not a melody first and words added, or words first, melody added. I try to write them at the same time because of maybe different reasons than Dan's. My reasons are that I want to make sure the story comes across, and so I write it so that I want the word gets to your ear in a way that where it lands and you hear it. And so I'm not trying to make an idea fit into a melody or make I very carefully choose how it's going to be delivered so that the progression, the melody, the vibe of the song, like what rhythm is it, what's the feel of the song, everything supports and advances that story so the listener it lands and gets in there. It's not by accident that you hear what I'm trying to say and it moves you. It's because I want it to. I've written it so that it's going to find its way in there. It might work, it might not work, but that's the goal.
Cool. I've been around you just for a very short time at Wintergrass, and then chances on preparing for today. And I get the sense that you guys are very, very committed to each other, and it's full of love. So what is the most surprising thing thus far that you've learned about each other in your guys' romantic journey?
You go first.
Surprising. I guess it's when somebody's so talented and so good at everything. I mean, Dan is not just a great singer and songwriter and guitar player. He also builds guitars. He builds homes. He can fix or repair anything. If he doesn't have the tool, he'll actually make the tool, design the tool. Somebody who's got as many gifts as Dan does, and yet he is so unselfish and unaware of how gifted he is, and he's very modest and humble about all of that. And that would be, I think it would be hard for a person to do that, and especially men. I think he doesn't beat you over the head with it. What's the line from Stripes? Chicks dig me, guys want to fight me. I mean, that's he could easily go there, but he doesn't. And that's one of the things I learned early on, but about him. But I love that about him.
Yeah, that's funny and wonderful. I'd say the Stripes. Was it Dan Aykroyd that said that, or was
I think it's Bill Murray.
Bill Murray, yeah.
And he's chicks dig me, guys want to fight me, and I rarely wear underwear, and when I do, it's usually something really unusual. It's that whole speech he makes. I can't remember what was exactly happening, but it was a memorable. It's what resonated when not the underwear part, but the rest of it about learning about Dan.
These are the kind of things that our fans really don't know about you. So I really appreciate you opening up and being vulnerable. This is great. This is exactly
I don't think our kids know this about him.
Well, okay. Well, even more. That's why these interviews become good to watch, because you learn something, right? So Dan, your turn.
I guess for me, the surprising thing, to answer your question directly, and I think this is what, to me, in my belief, this is what's key to a good intimate relationship. I think no matter who we are, we have fear that if we really showed all our vulnerabilities to someone, they'll say, oh, no, thanks. This is too much. I'm out. And so it's surprising to me that 23 years later, Kristen is still 100% accepting and receives all those sweetnesses and holds me dear. So
That's awesome. So let's go to something that a lot of our fans are really interested in hearing about. So every band that we've interviewed has had several interesting and or funny road stories from their travels. Are there a couple that come to mind that you wouldn't mind sharing with the fans today?
Sure. We've been to Ireland on tour 2 or 3 times now, and those are always such wonderful experiences no matter where we go. I can't explain why necessarily, just there's a real connection to music that is so gratifying for musicians. So we don't go there to play Irish music, or music as they call it. We go there to play our music, and there's a great deal of appreciation for it. But one of the things, we were playing at this funny little town at the end of a long road on the west coast of County Galway, in a little town called was County Mayo, actually. It was called Belmullet, right?
mm-hmm.
Little tiny town. Like, you go through lots of little narrow lanes and lots of sheep running across, and then you finally come to the ocean, and there's a little town there. And after the show, the guy who produced the show said, you got to come down to McDonald's, and that's where everybody's going to be after the show. So I'm thinking Golden Arches, but no, it was not. It was McDonald's spelled differently, and it was a pub. Really, it was obviously the pub to be at. And 4 doors down was McDonald's funeral home, owned by the same family, because that's how small a town it is. But we walk in, and they're all there's a couple people with an older guy and a young kid playing electric guitar and electric bass, playing every 1970s pop song from America that you can think of, like Eagles and Billy Joel and all that stuff. And I knew every word to every song they were playing. And the guy who produced the show whispered in their ear and said, there's a band here from America. You should invite that singer up here to sing one. And so they invite me up there, and I was thinking, these people don't want to hear me sing, but they'd just been to our show.
Yeah, a whole bunch of them came from our show to that place.
So I looked at the list, and I pointed to a song, and we played it, and they played it, and we picked a key and sang it. And the bartender, after I was done, the bartender says, leave it to the American girl to pick the only Irishman on the list. And it was Van Morrison. And I thought, of course he is Irish. I didn't even think about that at the time. Anyway. So
yeah, that's funny. You got one, Dan?
Kristen and I have toured more as a duo even than as a band. We've done a lot of things with the band, but we also get to do a lot of duo shows and duo trips. And this isn't really a funny story, but it's just something indicative of what happens for us. We a couple of years ago, we're driving through Colorado, and we were playing somewhere till pretty late one night, and then had to play the next day, and it was a long drive across the state. So we thought, well, let's just get done with the show. And we're always a little wired when we're done, so it's hard to lie down and go to sleep if you'd have to get up at 5:30 and hit the road. So instead, we just took off and drove all night, and then got there at 3 a.m. or something. And that way we can crash and sleep till late in the day, because we're already on site where the show is going to be the next day. And it was kind of great because there was no internet service at all. So no requirements of we better catch up on these emails or get this sent off or whatever. It was just the two of us. And we'd been working on this one song, and we must have sang the lyrics to it a cappella 500 times
right
during that drive to the Front Range in the middle of the night. And it was just so great. We're just working out all these little nuances, and no guitar in my hand. I'm driving. Kristen could have had her ukulele in her lap, but we're just working it out and having a great time. And then we go and we fall asleep, and we wake up, and it's like, did we work out all the vocal parts to that song last night? And then pick up instruments and try it for the first time. And it was so rewarding, and that happens a lot. One time we wrote a song while driving, and I said, hey, why don't you drive? And I've got this riff in my head. And like Kristen says, she always likes to create the music and the lyrics at the same time. And in this case, the challenge is I've already got this kind of mood and thing I'm working on.
Yeah.
And so before I get too far, she'll say, play that one lick again in the drop D part, and I'll play it. And then she'll go, be quiet, while she's driving along. Okay, play it again. Okay, be quiet. Okay, now go. What are you going to go to next? And then I'll like, what if I went here? And then we'll just create the song. And she's saying words, and I'm jotting them down, and we come up with a good song at the end of it. So
Yeah.
How fun.
Yeah.
So would you provide us some thoughts around the 2022 Songwriter Showcase at South by Southwest, and tell us about one of the women who wrote our 2020 soundtrack by the Bluegrass Situation? I've been trying to read up on this and trying to understand it, and right over my head, I don't get it. So could you just kind of explain that to our fans and to me?
Sure. So South by Southwest, it's that big festival down in Austin, and It's an annual thing. It's really shifted, I think, more toward tech than away from kind of the music world. It doesn't mean there's no music. There is plenty. But one of the perks of winning the USA Songwriting Contest, which is a big national contest, but unlike when I was at Telluride or Merlefest or one of those contests, you don't show up and play in the finals. You submit the song, and then a panel of judges narrows it to a list, and then that list is narrowed further until they choose one. And one of the prizes, there's just all kinds of prizes. I won a beautiful electric guitar. got cash. I got a bunch of things. But one of them is a little slot at the songwriter stage. It's like, one set, 45, 50 minutes set.
Because South by Southwest has venues all over town happening at the same time.
So we flew down there and played our set, and it was right on the lake there. It was a really pretty setting, and it was crazy, like an anthill covered with people. It was just crazy busy in Austin, and we had a show the next day. So the slot they gave us was that we flew in, and the next morning flew out early. So but we fortunately made the next gig, so we unfortunately didn't get to stay and see much of it. And then with the women who wrote our 2020 soundtrack, as you recall, in 2020, it's kind of a dubious honor, to be honest, because 2020 was not a great year for musicians.
Right.
We were all stuck in our living rooms, and everybody, as an aside, people would say, "Oh, it must have been great, all this time to write songs." I'm like, well, so my songs stem from interacting with people, and they are inspired by things that aren't just, I have a list of things I've been thinking about for a while, but usually the best songs are from interactions with people. And when you're in COVID and no one is going anywhere or doing anything, it's hard to find inspiration. But the Bluegrass Situation, as you know, is an online music industry platform that supports bluegrass, but broadly construed. So to include people like me, because I'm not hardly strictly bluegrass. I'm a singer-songwriter that loves the sound of bluegrass instruments. So that's where my songs come from. So they compiled a list of women who had written songs and had been featured on the Bluegrass Situation. Their songs that were moving to the curator of that site. And Dolly Parton had a song, and Brandi Carlile had a song, and I think there were 20 of us, and they picked "She Flies with Her Own Wings," which is a song I wrote, and that is the Oregon State motto. I think every state has a motto. I don't know what Washington's is, but Oregon's, it's "She Flies with Her Own Wings," and it has to do with independent spirit. So that is a song I wrote for a good friend of mine who was the governor, or Oregon's governor, Kate Brown, about how hard it was to be dropped into this leadership role, and how she conquered critics and got a lot of things done while she was in that leadership position. And it's a really simple song, but I threw my heart into it, and the Bluegrass Situation really liked it. So I was extremely honored to be in the same company as some of my musical heroes like Brandi and Dolly.
That's great. That really fills in a lot of missing blanks.
No,
by the way, Washington's state motto is number one of all 50. Take it or leave it. No, I'm just joking.
Isn't it? It's the evergreen state, but
Yeah,
that's,
it's evergreen
but
state.
and Oregon's the beaver state, but that's not the motto. So I don't know what the motto. I'll have to look it up. You know,
I
'cause
don't either. So
I grew up in Spokane. You'd think I'd know this.
oh,
I should know.
that reminds me of there's people who pronounce cities in Washington State. So there's Spokane, which is one for
Oh,
Spokane, and there's Yakima for Yakima,
Yakima.
and Puyallup for Puyallup.
oh
And so
yeah.
there's lots of different names that happen.
Sequim.
Sequim.
Sequim, yeah, that's another one.
And you know, Tukwila, it's got its own song. Tukwila. Da-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So you guys have been around a while doing this. Tell our audience who's your most influential musician and mentor, or both.
Well, I think musically, especially since Dan and I started playing and singing together, it's got to be Gillian Welch and David Rawlings. They were hugely influential. It was a style of music when I first heard them, a style of music and a connection and intimacy that I found profoundly moving and really compelling, without it being and relatable, I guess is how I'd put it. So I love them. I think they're the pinnacle of how I would love to, when Dan and I play as a duo, that I would love to have that kind of an impact on people the way that they have that impact on people and have they had that impact on me.
Wonderful. How about you, Dan?
Mine's kind of all over the map. When I first started, Don McLean was my inspiration to figure out how to play and sing and write. I'd heard him on the radio from the big hits, you know, Vincent and American Pie, but I got one of his albums way back and listened to all these other cuts on there and thought, this guy really writes some great stories. And then I got a live album and heard what he was like and how he could by himself get up and entertain the whole audience and be funny and witty and moving and deep, and was a good player and a good writer. And so that really inspired me to learn how to play and sing. And then I started to get into bluegrass and that kind of thing, and started to become inspired by other writers who were playing acoustically. And I started playing the mandolin a lot and took inspiration from Sam Bush, and then in guitar, Russ Barenberg. And then I discovered other really powerful songwriters like Patty Griffin and I could just go on and on.
Sure.
But I'd have to say my most influential musician has got to be Kristen Grainger.
Yeah.
I go.
That's awesome. So this is a little bit rabbit trailish, but I'm going to offer you both $20 each. If either one of you needs, that means you get two guesses to guess who was my first influence in my music career. It's pretty broad, but I'm doing it live on air. So if you get it, I will give you each $20 at the festival when you get here, if you guess it.
And it's one person you're talking.
One person.
I'm going to go with Paul Stuckey.
Kristen?
I'm going to go with Bob Dylan.
Nope. Neither one is correct, and I didn't expect that you would get it. That's why I bet $20. I don't know if you know this or not, but my main instrument is saxophone. So the first person who influenced me was Boots Randolph. And when you did the Tequila thing, it kind of, for some reason, brought that back to mind.
Oh, dang. Okay.
Yakety sax.
Silk Degrees, was that his album?
Pardon?
Silk Degrees, was that his album?
It's been a long time. That was when I was in 7th grade, so I can't remember the actual album.
Wow,
okay.
okay.
But I remember Yakety sax, and I'll bring my sax to the festival. I have a chance. I might do, play a little bit with a jam or something. But anyway, yeah. So you've already talked to us about the other band members. So who are you guys currently listening to? I know some folks have the a time in their life that they're listening to somebody that they're really enjoying. Who would that be in your lives? And by the way, I try to keep this at 30 minutes. We're a little bit past that, if you don't mind, for a few more questions and then the rapid fire.
Okay.
Great.
War and Treaty. I don't know if you've heard them yet, but they're fantastic. It's I don't know if they're married, but they're definitely a couple, and they're fantastic. Great harmony, great chemistry between them. Really, really talented couple.
Dan?
I like the Civil Wars, who I don't think are together anymore, but also made a couple of great records. And I guess I'll stop there. I could.
Okay, that's all right.
30, but
Interesting, because other people can go and listen to who you like as well, and that just the whole reason for this interview is to help our audience kind of get to know you a little bit, so that when you're up on stage, they go, "Who are these guys?" They kind of have a little bit of a virtual, intimate relationship with you, of knowing a little bit about you and your lives and stuff. And I think that really helps enhance the listening experience for our fans. So I appreciate you. Again, thank you for doing this. You've talked about some of the things you've done in your life, but do you have anything that you would quote as a hobby that you do that is not what you normally do?
Well, we do a whole bunch of stuff. I think we don't sleep much. I guess that's why we do a whole bunch of things. We taught ourselves during the pandemic. We taught ourselves to reupholster furniture, and that's been fun. We often will take we help remodel things, or like to remodel things. Dan was a custom builder for a long time, so we bought a little Craftsman down the street that was going to pot and brought it back to life. It's beautiful, and a family's living in it now, and it's got a whole new lease on life, and that's been kind of fun. But one other thing, and then I promise I'll let you answer, is that I'm involved with this group of women songwriters, called She's Speaking, and we put on live shows with 8 women songwriters on stage, and we trade off songs. We also sing on each other's songs, and we do a couple songs as a whole group. And it is a big, wonderful, sassy show.
Every kind of music.
It's across all genres. And so I'm the only bluegrassy person. There's others that are kind of folk Americana, but there's gospel, jazz, blues, rock, all kinds of indie, all kinds of music. And we started during COVID with a YouTube channel because that's all we could do. And then we expanded to doing live shows, and we kind of reserved the month of March because that's Women's History Month. And we've got already 7 or 8 shows on the books for next March. And if you ever get a chance to see it, it is just a big, fun, jangly, great time.
And what is that called again?
She's Speaking. And,
She's Speaking. All right.
And if you look on YouTube, we're She's Speaking Songs, and that's our handle. And it's also the handle for our website. Our social media presence is at She's Speaking Songs.
All right.
Dan.
As promised, Dan, your turn.
What's the question?
What do you do?
The question is, what's your hobby outside of the normal things you do?
Sorry.
Well, I luckily, as a little side note, there are 2 men that get to perform as part of the She's Speaking show. And we're both guitar players in the back row, and I'm honored to be one of those. So that's a lot of fun.
That's great.
I do have a lot of hobbies. I do love making instruments, making guitars and ukuleles and banjos and things. So that's always have something like that going in the basement. We love to camp and hike and fly fish. And so we get out as much as we can into the environment and enjoy nature. And that's just been a lot of fun. So I'd say the outdoors and the wood shop are my 2.
That's awesome. I love fly fishing myself. Tie my own.
Nice.
So at this year's festival, your band members are instructors, and both of you are, and you're doing a workshop called Songwriting for the Mildly Curious. Can you maybe expand on that just real shortly to kind of let folks know what that's going to be about?
Sure. It's called Songwriting for the Mildly Curious because we don't want people to come and think that they have to know about songwriting. They have to know anything. Sometimes people want to come and write, and we'll do some of that. But really, if you just want to know where a song comes from, how it comes about, we're going to talk about our process and what we do to create the songs that we've created so far. And we'll play and sing some, but we'll also have some prompts for people to think about writing and to get the juices flowing. It's going to be really informal, really friendly, non-confrontational sort of environment where we want people to come away having a better sense of how it's done, and at least how we do it.
That'll be great. I've always wanted to write a song, and I wanted to write a song for Robin, my wife, who you guys know.
Yeah.
It's been 8 years. I still haven't got anything yet. I have all kinds of things I want to talk about, but so if I could come to your workshop, maybe I'll learn some things that might help me along that path.
There you go.
It's never too late, I tell you.
Yeah.
If it's in you, it's got to come out, right?
Yeah, for sure. I've written a poem before, and that came out okay. But maybe I put that to music or something. Who knows? Anyway, enough about me. So this is kind of like a self-advertisement question. And if you have something negative to say, just give me a thumbs up so I can mute you while you're talking. So any thoughts about playing at the North Cascades Bluegrass Festival this coming weekend?
We're really excited about it. I grew up in Marysville, Washington, which is not that far from Bellingham.
Right.
And spent a lot of time up around there. And so one, it's just beautiful country and we're excited to be up there. And two, it just everything that we've read about this festival and heard about, it just sounds like a really well put together event and in a beautiful place. And we're excited about the other groups that are going to be there, the other bands, and we just think it's going to be a great weekend.
And we're supporting the Kruger brothers at the Alberta Rose show in Portland on the 31st of August. So right before we come up, we'll have shared a show with them. So that'll be
great.
fun. Yeah,
That's great. That'll be great.
Fun.
So I'm going to move in. Just I don't want to take up too much of your time. We're approaching 45 minutes. So I'm going to go to the rapid fire segment. Then we'll have one last question after that. So this is intended to be rapid fire. I'm going to ask you some off the wall questions, and you can each answer them together. Separately, and then we'll move to the next one. So the idea is to keep it brief and we'll rock and roll. So what are your favorite hot and cold drinks? And we'll just go with Dan first each time.
Coffee and beer.
Hot chocolate and a gin and a vodka tonic.
Vodka tonic. Yeah. Who's the most famous person you've ever met?
Gerald Ford.
Oh, brother. Famous. I've met, I know, bro, Dan Wetzel. I've met Michelle Obama. Yes.
Okay.
I was trying to figure out if she or the Anglican minister from South Africa.
Oh yeah.
Can't remember his name.
Desmond Tutu.
Yes, I can't tell which one would be more famous. Anyway, met both of those people.
If cost was not an issue and you could visit anywhere in the world, where would it be and why? Pardon me.
Wow.
I'll go.
Yeah.
New Zealand. But I want to go on a private jet because the trip is really long.
Yeah, it's long.
And I'd want to go there because it is beautiful and the fly fishing is supposed to be amazing. The hiking is supposed to be amazing. And there are no snakes or spiders. Ta-da.
Yeah. Hello.
I would second that. I've always wanted to go there and fish and see it. So. Awesome. And if Kristen's gone, I'd just soon go with her. So.
What's your favorite food?
Oh, I think you're asking you every time. Chocolate is my favorite food.
I'd say Italian food.
Do you cook? And if so, what are your favorite things to cook? Or your favorite thing? Let's make it one.
Oh, I do cook. I love to cook. Favorite thing to cook? Risotto.
I help cook a lot, I'd say.
You make a mean pancake.
I do make a mean pancake, and I love to grill.
Great. That looks really nice. Since he likes Italian food and you're doing risotto, it's a match made in heaven right there.
I know. So many indications.
So have you ever broken any bones? And if so, how did it happen?
I had a stress fracture in my foot in high school from running cross country, but that's the only broken bone I've ever had.
Go cross country. I was cross country too.
All right.
Well, I broke my foot sliding down a slippery carpeted stairs holding a newborn, and I didn't want to hurt the baby, so I sacrificed my foot.
Okay. Yeah. What's your favorite key to sing in?
The People's Republic of C.
Mine
Same for you.
Go ahead.
Same for you, Dan?
Mine might be E.
E. Okay.
If I'm singing lead.
All right.
Yeah.
Do you dream? And if so, do any of your dreams come true?
I think all of my dreams come true. I do dream, and anything that is like a promise type dream, it just seems to come true. We either make it so, or it's just some sort of future insight.
Well, the kind of dreams I have when I'm sleeping, I hope a lot of them don't come true. They're just bizarre. Yeah, I no more cold Thai food before bed.
Who's your favorite actor?
Emma Thompson.
Wow, that's hard. Robert Duvall.
Okay. What's your favorite movie?
Wrestling with Ernest Hemingway.
The state in Maine.
If you're not based out of their current location, is there a secondary place you might want to live?
Galway.
Cortona, Italy.
Yeah.
And what's your favorite venue to play and why?
Wow, that's tough.
North
I
Cascades.
know it's every artist so far has said the same thing. It's
Yeah,
very tough.
it's really tough.
And then they named 3.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll just say we really love this hayloft venue in our town. It's 110 people crammed into literally a hayloft where she's got chairs jammed up against each other, and it looks like the inside of Noah's Ark, all the wood in there. And
No PA.
no PA. The acoustics are great, and the people are so quiet. You can hear their stomachs growl. It's super intimate. It's harder to sing there. It's more daunting to sing there than it was to sing on this main stage in Telluride, because everybody is listening to every word and every note. And in Telluride, they might be, they might not be. There's a whole sea of people out there. Who knows what's going on?
Cool. So before we close, if you had only one message to provide to your fan base and those listening today, what would it be?
Well, keep supporting live music. That's the thing, is that I don't want the future generations to miss out on the joy and wonder of being around live music all the time. And I that's super important, not just for supporting True North, but supporting all live music. There's just really wonderful experiences we had through.
Great.
I agree with that, and I thought that all along, ever since I've been a musician, but especially when the pandemic happened and we were playing to our iPhones across the room instead of people. We knew people were out there, but there was no interaction, and an audience is every bit as important to a show as the people on stage. It's just, it doesn't happen without an audience. So that's the communication that's happening back and forth. So please keep supporting it wherever you can find it.
Well, I just want to say thank you. This has been enlightening and fun, and we look forward to seeing you on Labor Day weekend. And I wish you the best. Have a great time at the Kruger Brothers with the deal you're going to on the 31st, and we shall see you soon. So
Thanks, David. Appreciate it.
Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye.